Nature has helped produce some stunning wonders around the world. Every year, various human activities and natural phenomena cause environmental disasters and substantial economic losses throughout the world. Despite this dark side, there's something fascinating about the power of nature and its impact.
Don't expect to find the very popular Aurora Borealis or fire rainbows listed here. This list is to present some of the most amazing natural phenomena, ranging from common ones to ones that are less known to the public.
Hair ice. Hair ice, also known as ice wool, is a type of ice that forms on dead wood and takes the shape of fine, silky hair. It's somewhat uncommon and has been reported mostly at latitudes between 45 and 55 degrees north in broadleaf forests. They can maintain their shape for hours, sometimes days. This long lifetime indicates that something is preventing the small ice crystals from recrystallizing into larger ones, since recrystallization normally occurs very quickly at temperatures near 0 degrees Celsius. The hairs appear to root at the mouth of wood rays, and their thickness is similar to the diameter of the wood ray channels. A piece of wood that produces hair ice once may continue to produce it over several years. Researchers have said the reason why it took almost 100 years to confirm this was because hair ice is a somewhat rare and fleeting phenomenon. Hair ice grows mostly during the night and melts again when the sun rises. It is invisible in the snow and inconspicuous in hoarfrost.
Frost flowers. Frost flowers are ice crystals commonly found growing on young sea ice and thin lake ice in cold, calm conditions. The ice crystals are similar to hoarfrost and are commonly seen to grow in patches around 3 to 4 centimeters in diameter. Frost flowers grow on new sea ice. When the cold, moist air above becomes saturated, frost forms on imperfections on the icy surface. Frost on these imperfections seeds flowers, which rise as they wick moisture from the frozen surface, capturing salt and marine bacteria as they grow. Frost flowers bloom in the Southern Ocean and around Antarctica as well. But little is known about the physical, chemical, or biological nature of frost flowers at either pole. Scientists have learned to grow frost flowers in a freezer lab at the University of Washington to learn more about how these stunning structures form and interact with the environment. In general, frost flowers only form in relatively windless conditions.
Penitentes. Penitentes are beautifully sculpted snow formations found at high altitudes. They take the form of tall, thin blades of hardened snow or ice, closely spaced with their sharp curves oriented towards the general direction of the sun. These frozen pinnacles grow all over glaciated and snow-covered areas in the dry Andes, above 4,000 meters or 13,120 feet. They range in size from a few centimeters to over 5 meters or 16 feet tall. They form when the sun's rays turn snow directly into water vapor without melting at first, a process called sublimation. An initially smooth surface later develops depressions as some regions randomly sublimate faster than others. The curvatures then concentrate on sunlight and speed up sublimation in the depressions, leaving the higher points behind as forests of towering spikes.
Snow rollers. Snow rollers are formed when a thick layer of snow falls on top of a layer of ice. If the temperature and the wind speed are right, chunks of snow can break loose and start rolling. As they're blown along the ground like wintry tumbleweeds, they pick up additional snow along the way. The inner layers are often weaker and less compact, allowing them to be blown away easily by the wind, leaving a large, naturally formed snow donut. Because of the precise temperature and wind speeds required to create this effect, snow rollers are a rare sight, but have made headlines with their appearances in parts of North America and the UK. Unlike snowballs made by people, snow rollers are typically cylindrical in shape. and are often hollow since the inner layers, which are the first layers to form, are weak and thin compared to the outer layers and can be easily blown away, leaving what looks like a donut or a Swiss roll.
Red tides. Red tides are a phenomenon caused by large algal blooms, when colonies of algae reproduce so numerously that they discolor coastal waters. They are also known to deplete oxygen in the waters and/or release harmful toxins that may cause illness in humans as well as other animals. Red tide is a global phenomenon. However, since the 1980s, harmful red tide events have become more usual and widespread. While many people call these blooms red tides, scientists prefer the term harmful algal blooms. They have been reported in every US coastal state, and their occurrence may be on the rise. Red tides are of national concern, because they affect not only the health of people and marine ecosystems, but also the health of local and regional economies. A small percentage of algae, however, produce powerful toxins that can kill fish, shellfish, mammals, and birds, and may directly or indirectly cause illness in people. When masses of algae die and decompose, the process can ruin the habitat, causing the water to become so low in oxygen that animals will have to leave the area.
Striped icebergs, Antarctica. These strangely clothed icebergs are formed when large blocks of ice break off from a glacier's ice shelf and float into open waters. Because this ice is formed from seawater that contains organic matter and minerals, it washes a variety of colour and texturing into the iceberg. As the bergs become fragmented and sculpted by the wind and waves, the different coloured layers can develop striking patterns. Striped icebergs come in a variety of colours, including brown, black, yellow and blue. The different colours appear due to different reasons. Blue stripes are the most common, and they appear when crevices are filled with water and freeze so fast that no bubbles are formed. Green presents itself because the water that freezes is extremely rich in algae. Brown, yellow and even black stripes are caused by sediments picked up along the way when the ice sheet was sliding downhill. Striped icebergs are not exactly rare, but quite uncommon. Ice fumarole, Arctic. A normal fumarole is a vent that protrudes from the ground, allowing steam from volcanoes to escape out into the open. An ice fumarole is so cold that steam particles freeze upon contact with the outside air. Hundreds of icy towers are created by the natural contrasting hot and cold environment of Antarctica. As the heat from volcanoes melts the snow above, creating a deep cave, the rising steam instantly freezes as it meets the sub-zero temperatures. As the steam continues to climb and freeze at the top, the spiky towers continue to grow. Some of these icy stacks stand up to 60 feet high. Many ice fumaroles form around Mount Erebus.
Frozen methane bubbles. A bizarre yet beautiful phenomenon occurs each winter in many Canadian lakes when dangerous methane gas bubbles create an artistic design in the frozen ice. The methane bubbles depicted in the photographs have generated a lot of buzz, particularly on social media. Many people have never seen the phenomenon before and are absolutely marveled at the beauty of them and wonder what they really are. What happens is that dead organic matter falls into the water and sinks to the bottom, where bacteria consumes it and emits a methane gas in the form of bubbles that rise to the surface. When lakes are free of ice, the bubbles merely pop at the surface and the gas dissolves into the atmosphere. But when the lakes are freezing cold, the bubbles become frozen and trapped under the surface. The bubbles come in a variety of shapes and sizes, and some appear to be trapped in dozens of different layers of ice as they attempt to migrate upward. The bubbles can be dangerous if they are popped and ignited with a source of fire, but they are otherwise generally safe. Brinicle. Brinicles are created under sea ice when cold, saline water is introduced to an area of ocean water. At the time of its creation, a brinicle resembles a pipe of ice reaching down from the underside of a layer of sea ice. As the seawater freezes, it pushes out impurities, including salt. This makes the water surrounding the pipe more saline and more dense. As such, it starts to sink. As the dense water flows down, some of it freezes and creates the finger-like shape that's characteristic of the Brinicle. At first, a Brinicle is very fragile. Its walls are thin, and it's largely the constant flow of colder brine that sustains its growth and hinders its melt that would be caused with the contact with less cold surrounding water. The scientific studies of brinicles are still in their early stages, but as new and incredible things are discovered every year, the possibilities are absolutely endless. Rainbow eucalyptus trees. Native to the tropical regions of New Britain, New Guinea, Suriname, Sulawesi, and Mindanao, the rainbow eucalyptus is an extremely large, broad-leaved evergreen tree and is the only eucalyptus species indigenous to the northern hemisphere. It grows lightning quick, being able to double its size every year before reaching a trunk diameter of 6 feet and soaring to heights above 200 feet. In the US, rainbow eucalyptus grows in the frost-free climates found in Hawaii and the southern portions of California, Texas, and Florida. The most outstanding feature of a rainbow eucalyptus tree is its bark. The trees shed patches of bark at different times throughout the year, revealing a bright green layer. The inner bark then darkens and matures into shades of blue, orange, and maroon. Unfortunately, it cannot survive hot and dry weather or frosty conditions, and can only be grown in specific regions near the equator that will sustain this type of tree. It's commonly planted in parks and gardens in countries that can grow it.
Ice circles. Ice circles are extremely rare natural phenomenon which occurs only in slow-moving water at a particular speed and at a right temperature. They occur in rivers, streams, and creeks all over the world. Most go unnoticed, but a few have been seen by people and captured on video or in pictures. Ice circles are rare and form under very specific conditions. Ice circles are also known as ice discs or ice pans and form in cold climates such as North America and Scandinavia. Some ice circles have been seen in England and Wales as well. Ice circles can vary in size depending on the eddy and the weather, but they have also been documented to be as large as 50 feet in diameter. They usually form at the center of the lake and obtain their shape by grinding the edges, resulting in a smooth circle. Some may be irregular in shape, others form in clusters.
Baltic and North Seas meet. Over the centuries, millions of visitors have come to Skagen to witness an extraordinary wonder of nature, the two seas phenomenon. At the tip of Skagen is Grennan Beach, where the Skagerrak and the Kattegat seas meet in eternally clashing waves. Kattegat flows into the Baltic Sea and Skagerrak into the North Sea. Their convergence at Grennan creates unique conditions for wave interaction, currents, and sediment transport. The seas have a marginal difference in saline content and water density. Skagerrak is saltier than Kattegat due to its proximity to the Atlantic Ocean and the fact that Kattegat is diluted by the Baltic Sea, which has a lower saline level. In other words, the waters of the Baltic are mostly fresh from a large land catch basin, whereas the North Sea, coming from the Danish Straits, are more saline. It's this difference in density which creates the phenomenon, as the two bodies of water do not mix.
Lena Pillars, Russia. The Lena Pillars is the name given to a natural rock formation along the banks of the Lena River in far eastern Siberia. The pillars are 150 to 300 meters high and were formed in some of the Cambrian period sea basins. The pillars form rocky buttresses isolated from each other by deep and steep gullies developed by frost shattering directed along intervening joints. Penetration of water from the surface has facilitated the cryogenic process, which has widened the gullies between pillars, leading to their isolation. Fluvial processes are also critical to these pillars. The site also contains a wealth of Cambrian fossil remains of numerous species, some of them quite unique. The climate in the area is rather unusual. In winter, the mercury can drop below -35 degrees Celsius, and in summer, it's possible to expect not only plus 20 degrees Celsius, but also up to plus 40 degrees Celsius. The river makes the air very humid, causing hard frost in winter and swelteringly hot days in the summer.
Fairy circles, Namibia. Fairy circles are circular patches of land, barren of plants, though often encircled by a ring of stimulated growth of grass. They typically appear in the arid grasslands of the western part of southern Africa. Fairy circles vary between 2 and 15 meters in diameter. They typically occur in essentially monospecific grassy vegetation, especially in Namibia, where conditions are particularly arid. In the oral myths of the Himba people, these barren patches are said to have been caused by the gods, spirits, or natural divinities. Of specific beliefs, the Himba people note that their original ancestor, Makuru, was responsible for the creation of the fairy circles, or that they were the footprints of gods. There has long been debate about the causes of the circles. The investigation and development of theories have included numerous hypotheses, both mundane and supernatural. One favoured assumption is that the sand termite is responsible, but the range of the phenomena is much wider than that of the termite species, and details of the effects vary, so to ascribe all circles to any such single cause would be unrealistic.
Lencois Marannenses National Park, Brazil. Lencois Marannenses National Park in Maranhão State is one of Brazil's top natural attractions. It is an ecosystem formed of white sand dunes which cover 383,000 acres and look like bed sheets spread out on the northeastern coast. Seasonal lagoons, which fill up with rainwater, mostly during the first 6 months of the year, make Lencois Marannenses a unique kind of landscape. Lencois Marannenses has been formed over thousands of years, as the sand from riverbeds is deposited at the mouth of the rivers and brought back to the continent by winds and sea currents. The dunes advance as far as 31 miles into the continent and stretch along 27 miles of coastline, mostly deserted beaches. By any name, it is a magical desert, with wave after wave of shimmering white sand. Shoals of silvery fish swim in brilliant blue and green pools left behind by the rains. Shepherds lead caravans of goats over towering dunes, and fishermen head out to sea, guided only by the stars and the ghosts of old shipwrecks. Plitvice Lakes, Croatia. Located roughly halfway between capital cities Zagreb and Zadar on the coast, the lakes are a definite must-see in Croatia. The beauty of the national park lies in its 16 lakes, interconnected by a series of waterfalls and set in deep woodland populated by deer, bears, wolves, boars, and rare bird species. The national park covers a total area of 300 square kilometers, whilst the lake joins together over a distance of 8 kilometers. A well laid out system of wooden walkways allows you to pass all around and sometimes through the water, and there are hiking trails throughout the woods. In winter, the frozen falls are magnificent. In summer, the lush greenery is relaxing. In spring and fall, the water volume is highest. As a World Heritage Site, Plitvice maintains a pristine environment that is nearly primeval in its beauty. It's one reason why there's no swimming in the lakes, but you can marvel at the travertine formations, and the extraordinary variety of plants and animals that make their home in the park. Pamukkale, Turkey. Pamukkale, 11 miles north of Denizli, is Turkey's foremost mineral bath spa because of its natural beauty. The travertine features have their origins in the shifting of a fault in the valley of the Menderes River. As the fault shifted, very hot springs with a very high mineral content arose at this location. Apart from the slightly radioactive minerals, the calcium and hydrogen carbonate react to create calcium carbonate and limestone. This is what gives Pamukkale its whiteness and created pools. Named the Cotton Fortress, it has been a spa since the Romans built the spa city in Hierapolis around a sacred warm water spring. The antique pool is still there, littered with marble columns from the Roman temple of Apollo. With such a unique combination of natural and man-made wonders, it's a little wonder that Pamukkale Hierapolis has been made a UNESCO World Heritage Site. With over 2 million visitors annually, it is also Turkey's single most visited attraction.
Blue Flames, Indonesia. Indonesia's Kawah Ijen volcano has become famous due to the blue flames that appear at night. Many people confuse the fire to be lava, but the luminescent glow is the result of sulfuric gases. The phenomenon has been recorded for a great many years, but it has most likely been active long before the midnight hike was a common pastime. A 2-hour walk is required to reach the rim of the crater, followed by a 45-minute climb down to its bank. The sulfuric gas escapes through cracks and combusts at temperatures up to 600 degrees Celsius. The combination of the gas and our atmosphere creates the stunning blue effect. The flames can reach up to 16 feet. Some of the gas condenses into liquid sulfur, which continues to burn as it flows further down the mountain slope. It is the largest blue flame area in the world, and local people refer to it as Blue Fire.
Cave of Crystals, Mexico. The Nica mine of Chihuahua, Mexico is a working mine that is known for its extraordinary crystals. Nica is a lead, zinc, and silver mine in which large voids have been found containing crystals of selenite as large as 4 feet in diameter and 50 feet long. The chamber holding these crystals is known as the Crystal Cave of Giants and is approximately 1,000 feet down in the limestone host rock of the mine. The crystals were formed by hydrothermal fluids emanating from the magma chambers below. The cavern was discovered while the miners were drilling through the Nica fault, which they were worried would flood the mine. The Cave of Swords is another chamber in the Nica mine, containing similar large crystals. Geologists report that these natural crystal formations are incredibly complex, yet simple. They have a magical or metaphysical personality independent of their chemical structures.
Sailing Stones, Death Valley, California. Located in a remote area of California's Death Valley National Park, the heavy stones appear to move across the dried lake bed known as Racetrack Playa, leaving a trail behind them in the cracked mud. The rock's apparent movement has been blamed on everything from space aliens and magnetic fields to pranksters. But no one has actually seen the rocks move, which only adds to the mystery. Scientists have tried to solve the puzzle of the sailing stones for decades. Some researchers thought the dust devils might move the rocks, some of which weigh as much as 318 kilograms. Other researchers believed the strong winds that frequently whip across the vast lake bed could cause the rocks to slide across the ground. These and other theories were eventually disproved, leaving scientists without an explanation. In some cases, the rock's trails were measured to be as long as 820 feet. Some of the trails formed a graceful curve, which other trails created a straight line. then an abrupt shift to the left or right, which further baffled researchers.
Blood Falls, Antarctica. Blood Falls is a bright red waterfall oozing from Antarctica's ice. It's nearly 5 stories high in the Makurdo Dry Valley region, one of the coldest and most inhospitable places on Earth. Scientific tests showed that Blood Falls waters contained almost no oxygen and hosted a community of at least 17 different types of microorganisms, thought to be flowing from a lake trapped underneath the ice for some 2 million years. Trapped below a thick layer of ice, they have remained there ever since, isolated inside a natural time capsule, evolving independently of the rest of the living world. These microbes exist in a place with no light or free oxygen and very little heat, and are essentially the definition of primordial ooze. The trapped lake has very high salinity and is rich in iron, which gives the waterfall its red color. A fissure in the glacier allows the subglacial lake to flow out, forming the falls without contaminating the ecosystem within.
Lake Hillier, Australia. Lake Hillier is a pink-colored lake on Middle Island, the largest of the islands that make up the Recherche archipelago off the coast of Esperance. The lake is about 600 meters long and is surrounded by a rim of sand and dense woodland of paperbark and eucalyptus trees. The vibrant color is permanent and does not alter when the water is taken in a container. The source of the pink color is considered to be due to the presence of the organism Dunaliella salina, a microalgae. Another hypothesis is that the pink color is due to red halophilic bacteria in the salt crusts. Despite the unusual hue, the lake exhibits no known adverse effects upon humans, so it's perfectly safe to swim in. From above, the lake appears as a solid bubblegum pink, but from the shoreline, it appears more of a clear pink hue. The shoreline is also covered in salt crust deposits.
Sea of Stars, Vaadhoo, Maldives. The startling pinpricks of light which shimmer upon the shore of Vaadhoo, Maldives is a result of phytoplankton, marine microbes which are bioluminescent. The cytoplankton cell membrane responds to electrical signals, producing their eerie yet beautiful glow. The marine phenomenon can be best seen during moonless nights. Scuba divers can wave their arms or run their fingers on the sand while under the sea to cause a reaction on the glowing planktons. The Sea of Stars is usually referred to as bioluminescent waves and has been reported in San Diego, California, and even Texas. The phenomenon of the glowing ocean has fascinated sea travelers for a long time. Folklore from Northern Europe, Southeast Asia, and the South Pacific include reference to it. Whether on land or sea, however, bioluminescence is another in the long list of those curious traits of our planet's organisms.
Red Seabeach, Panjin, China. The red grass genus seepweed defines the unusual and impressive landscape in this Chinese city. Shallow seas and tidelands attract thousands of migrating birds to the biggest wetland and reed marsh in the world. Every autumn, the 26-kilometer-long area of nature reserve turns all red. The incredible red Seabeach lies on the bank of the Liao River. Seepweed matures and gains this crimson-red color in September. During summer, it remains green. The Red Beach is located in the biggest wetland and reed marsh in the world and actually hosts the most completed ecosystem that can be found. The area has become home to more than 260 kinds of birds and 399 kinds of wild animals. You can find the endangered crown crane and black-beaked gulls, which is why the area is called Home of the Cranes. In order to keep the whole ecosystem safe, the area was granted state-level protection back in 1988.
Thors Well, Cape Perpetua. Also known as the drain pipe of the Pacific, the well is actually a hole in the rock that only appears to drain water from the ocean. In reality, the huge hole is likely only around 20 feet deep. Even if the well is not quite as magic as it may seem, it still manages to produce absolutely amazing sights, but it is not for the faint of heart. The sight is said to be the most spectacular when it's at high tide, or during storms when water washes violently over the rocks and falls back through the hole. During these sudden torrents, unsuspecting visitors to the site run the risk of being swept right into the maelstrom, in which survival seems very unlikely. Regardless of the risks, photographers and nature lovers alike continue to flock to the stunning fountain in the hopes of getting that perfect shot of the aggressive waters that live up to their namesake's stormy personality. Thors well is also called the Spouting Horn.
Lake Natron, Tanzania. Lake Natron in Tanzania is one of the most serene lakes in Africa, but is also the source of some of the most phantasmagorical photographs ever captured. The alkaline water in Lake Natron has a pH as high as 10.5 and is so caustic it can burn the skin and eyes of animals that can't adapt to it. The water's alkalinity comes from the sodium carbonate and other minerals that flow into the lake from the surrounding hills. The color of the lake is characteristic of those where very high evaporation rates occur. As water vaporizes during the dry season, salinity levels increase to the point that salt-loving microorganisms begin to thrive. Such halophile organisms include some cyanobacteria that can make their own food with photosynthesis as plants do. The red accessory photosynthesizing pigment in the cyanobacteria produces the deep reds of the open water of the lake and the orange colors of the shallow embankment. The lake is the only regular breeding area in East Africa for the 2.5 million lesser flamingos, whose status of near threatened results from their dependence on this one location. The Wave, Arizona. The Wave is a sandstone formation on the slopes of the Coyote Buttes in the Paria Canyon Vermilion Cliffs, located in northern Arizona. The undulating strata and spectrum of colors found in the sandstone walls of the Wave date back to the Great Panjin Desert of the Jurassic period, about 160 to 180 million years ago. Wind and water erosion carves, smooths, and reveals layers of sand left as great dunes, which then compact and mineralize into stone. While the Wave is a smooth, polished bowl of striped, wind-swept sandstone, the same exotic rock is displayed in numerous forms, shapes, colors, and patterns throughout the guided hike to the phenomenon. Despite the sheer landscape of the Wave, casualties have been reported due to the dangerous unmarked trails and staggering rock faces.
Danxia Landforms, China. These mountains are part of the Zhangye Danxia Landform Geological Park in China. Zhangye Danxia is known for the unusual colors of the rocks, which are smooth, sharp, and several hundred meters tall. They are the result of deposits of sandstone and other minerals that occurred over 24 million years. The result, similar to a layer cake, is connected to the action of the same tectonic plates responsible for creating parts of the Himalayan mountains. Wind, rain, and time then sculpted extraordinary shapes, including towers, pillars, and ravines, with varying colors, patterns, and sizes. The landforms look very much like karst topography that forms in areas underlain by limestones. But since the rocks that form Danxia are sandstones and conglomerates, they have been called pseudokarst landforms. In 2005, Zhangye Danxia was voted by a panel of reporters from 34 major media outlets as one of the most beautiful Danxia landform areas in China.
Giant's Causeway, Ireland. Giant's Causeway on the northeastern coast of Ireland is perhaps the most famous set of basalt columns in the world. The Causeway is a mass of basalt columns packed tightly together. The tops of the columns form stepping stones that lead to the cliff foot and disappear under the sea. Altogether, there are 40,000 of these stone columns, mostly hexagonal, but some with 4, 5, 7, and 8 sides. The tallest are about 40 feet high, and the solidified lava in the cliffs is nearly 90 feet thick in places. The area, now a World Heritage Site, is protected by the Department of the Environment for Northern Ireland. The landmark is so named because of an old legend that explains the columns as being remnants of a huge road built by a giant.
Spotted Lake, Canada. Located near the city of Osuyus in British Columbia, Canada's Spotted Lake draws visitors from around the world. The Spotted Lake has a very high concentration of numerous different minerals, such as magnesium sulfate, calcium, and sodium sulfates. It also contains extremely high concentrations of 8 other minerals as well as some small doses of 4 others such as silver and titanium. Most of the water in the lake evaporates over the summer, leaving behind large spots of minerals. Depending on the mineral composition left behind, the spots will be of white, pale yellow, green, or blue in colour. The spots are made mainly of magnesium sulfate, which crystallizes in the summer to form hardened natural walkways around and between the spots. Known as Cleeluk to the natives of the Okanagan Valley, the lake is a sacred and culturally significant site whose potential for commercial exploitation recently generated much controversy. The therapeutic quality of the waters has been known for millennia. The native Indians use the mud and waters of the lake to heal aches and ailments. Today, the lake is surrounded by a fence to keep people from wandering too close.
Moeraki Boulders, New Zealand. 40 kilometers south of Oamaru, huge spherical boulders are scattered along the beach. Others can be seen emerging from the sandstone cliffs. Each boulder weighs several tons and is up to 2 meters high. According to Maori legend, the boulders are gourds washed ashore from the great voyaging canoe Ara Iteru when it was wrecked upon the landfall in New Zealand hundreds of years ago. Scientists explain the boulders as calcite concentrations formed about 65 million years ago. Crystallization of calcium and carbonates around charged particles gradually formed the boulders in a pearl-like process that took as long as 4 million years. The soft mudstone containing the boulders was raised from the seabed around 15 million years ago. Waves, wind, and rain are excavating them one by one. Cano Cristales, Colombia. The Cano Cristales River in Colombia is regarded by many as the most beautiful river in the world. Known as the Liquid Rainbow or Rainbow River, the spectacular waters are turned into a kaleidoscope of color thanks to freshwater plants known as Macarenia clavigira and endemic to the Sierra de la Macarena, a mountain range south of the capital of Bogota. During the short time between the wet and dry season, July to November, along with moss, aquatic plants, and corals, the red plants cling to rocks throughout the 62-mile-long river and help to create a fusion of colors just under the surface of the water. Tourists flock to witness the display in season, with the crystal clear water showing the wildlife under the surface, as well as the beautiful plants. Green, blue, black, red, and yellow are all very visible during the season, and locals say the best time to see the plants at their brightest is just after a storm, when the colors appear at their most vivid. The geological formation of the river is rich with sediment, and the rocks are some 1.2 billion years old. This, combined with the different colored plantation, helps create the beautiful prism of color. But for half the year, the river is much like any other, the bed of rocks creating a shimmering gray color with the odd splashes of green moss along the way. Saltstraumen, Norway. The maelstrom of Saltstraumen is the world's strongest maelstrom and is located 10 kilometers southeast of the city of Vaadhoo, Norway. Its impressive strength is caused by the world's strongest tide occurring in the same location. A narrow channel connects the outer salt fjord with its extension, the large Skjerstad fjord, causing a colossal tide which in turn produces the Saltstraumen maelstrom. The phenomenon occurs every 6 hours when almost 400 million cubic meters of water passes through the 3-kilometer long and 150 meter wide strait between the Stallenfjord and the Skjerstad fjord at speeds of up to 20 knots. The Saltstraumen is popular with anglers due to its abundance of fish such as saithe, cod, wolffish, rosefish, and halibut. Coalfish is a specialty of the area. The largest documented coalfish of 22.7 kilograms was caught in the Saltstraumen on a fishing rod.
The flowering desert, Chile. This phenomenon happens in the third region from the Pamukkale stream to the second region border. The vegetation invites the visitors from all over the world to enjoy this landscape. You can also see the animals that live in the desert, such as the desert cow, rare birds, and reptiles. The blooming of the desert is a miracle of nature and the most impressive and beautiful phenomenon to take place in Chile. Hundreds of kilometers of desert, usually only sand and rocks, are transformed into a great carpet of color and life thanks to the kindness of water. The flowering period varies according to the characteristics of the rainfalls, but usually starts at the end of August and may last till November or even December. Some species you can find are red and yellow Ananucas, white flowers of Wheelie, pink flowers of Patadiguanaco, and sky blue and pink Suspiros. Since many of the species that bloom in the blooming desert phenomenon do not grow anywhere else on this planet, its preservation is fundamental. There are established treks to walk, and cutting flowers is prohibited, as they do not grow in pots nor gardens.
The underwater forest, Lake Kandy. Lake Kandy is a 400-meter-long lake in Kazakhstan's portion of the Tian Shan Mountains, located 129 kilometers from the city of Almaty. The lake was created after an earthquake in 1911 that triggered a large landslide, blocking the gorge and forming a natural dam. Subsequently, rainwater filled the valley and created the lake. The lake is famous for its scenic beauty, particularly the submerged forests and the imposing trunks of spruce trees that rises out of the lake water. Above water, the sunken trees appear as a large mast from long ghost ships, or perhaps the spears of a mysterious army from a time long lost. The water is so cold that the great pines still remain on the trees, even 100 years later. Because of the clear mountain water, you can see deep into the depths of the lake. In winter, the surface of the lake freezes over, and during this time, Lake Kandy becomes a great spot for trout fishing and ice diving. The Great Blue Hole, Belize. The Great Blue Hole is a large underwater sinkhole off the coast of Belize. It lies near the center of Lighthouse Reef, a small atoll 100 kilometers from the mainland of Belize City. The hole is circular in shape, over 300 meters across and 125 meters deep, the world's largest natural formation of its kind. The Great Blue Hole is part of the Large Barrier Reef Reserve System, a World Heritage Site of the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. The sinkhole originally formed as a limestone cave during the last glacial period, a time when sea levels were much lower. As the ocean began to rise, the cave system flooded and eventually collapsed, creating a vertical cave in the ocean. The Great Blue Hole is a world-class destination for recreational scuba divers attracted by the opportunity to dive in crystal clear waters and see myriad species of marine life, including tropical fish and spectacular coral formations. The marine life in these areas includes nurse sharks, giant groupers, and several types of reef sharks, such as the Caribbean reef shark and the black tip shark. These geological formations can still be viewed by divers today. It is said that the deeper one goes, the water becomes more clear and the formations more complex.
Socotra Island, Yemen. The island of Socotra is part of an archipelago in the Indian Ocean. It's so isolated that a third of its plant life is found nowhere else on the planet. Notable are the dragon's blood trees that look like flying saucers perched on trunks. Adenium socotranum are trees that look like elephants' legs with pink flowers on top. Birds such as the Socotra starling, Socotra sunbird, and the Socotra grosbeak are found nowhere else on Earth. Socotra Island is home to around 800 rare species of flora and fauna, around a third of which are again found nowhere else on Earth. Nestled in the Indian Ocean some 250 kilometers away from Somalia and 340 kilometers away from Yemen, the island's harsh environment includes wide sandy beaches, limestone caves, and towering mountains, but it's very hot and dry, leading to the distinctive appearance of its plants. The trees and plants on the island have evolved to suit its hostile climate, and some varieties of plant are a staggering 20 million years old. It's a quiet and peaceful enclave in an otherwise troubled world. If you decide to visit there, you can forget all about beachfront hotels and restaurants. This island is geared towards ecotourism and sustaining the local economy and way of life. The name Socotra is derived from a Sanskrit name, meaning the Island of Bliss.
Green Lake, Austria. On the bed of the emerald green waters of Green Lake, Austria, underwater explorers will discover fish swimming through the branches of trees, a floor covered in grass, benches, bridges, and a landscape that looks like it belongs over the ground. It is because for half the year it is overground. In the frozen winter months, the area is almost completely dry and is a favorite site for hikers. As the temperature begins to rise in spring, the ice and snow on the mountaintops begin to melt and runs down into the basin of land below. The waters are at their highest in June, when it becomes a mecca for divers keen to explore the rare phenomenon, before the waters recede at the end of July. The Door to Hell, Turkmenistan. The Door to Hell is a natural gas field in Druiz, Turkmenistan that has been burning continuously since it was discovered in 1971. The name Door to Hell was given to the field by the locals, referring to the fire, boiling mud, and orange flames in a large crater, which has a diameter of 70 meters. The hotspots range over an area with a width of 200 feet and to a depth of about 20 meters. Getting to the crater, located some 270 kilometers from the capital of Ashgabat, is not an easy task, but those seeking extreme thrills can hire a guide to get to the right location. YouTube is filling up with videos of the site, with many observers filmed from the brink of the pit, ignoring the possibility it might collapse. Turkmenistan is one of the most isolated countries in the world, yet its fledgling tourism industry hopes to capitalize on the crater as an attraction to thrill seekers. Because it's not fenced off, visitors can stand right on the edge of the crater, despite the safety hazards.
Salar de Uyuni, Bolivia. Salar de Uyuni, or Salar de Tunapa, is the world's largest salt flat at 10,582 square kilometers. The salar was formed as a result of transformations between several prehistoric lakes. High salinity meant that whilst the vast prehistoric lake has long since evaporated under the fierce sun, a thick crust of salt remains. forming what we now recognize as the salt flats of Salar-di Uyuni. Photographers flock here to capture the unique landscape. Unlike traditional deserts, which have sand in abundance, the Salar-di Uyuni features vast expanses of glistening white salt. The landscape is entirely flat, bar a few small islands such as the Isla Incahuasi, which only accentuates its surreal beauty. Underneath the cemented salt are large reservoirs of lithium-rich brine. In fact, approximately 70% of the world's lithium reserves are found in Salar-di Uyuni. Unlike any other place on Earth, the Salar-di Uyuni is breathtakingly beautiful and provides an extraordinary experience that will not be quickly forgotten.